Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking on a stack of sources about a topic that it really sits at the intersection of theology, history, and social justice.
A big one.
A huge one. What the Bible, both Old and New Testaments, actually has to say about poverty and the poor.
And it's so often misunderstood. I mean, really misunderstood.
Oh, completely. It gets reduced to these little sound bites, or even worse, it's used to justify, indifference or even oppression.
Right. And a lot of people are working with a pretty flawed idea of God's view on someone's financial status.
So our mission today is to try and get a more nuanced perspective. We're going to look at the surprisingly broad meaning of poverty in the text.
And God's explicit commands about it.
Yeah, the causes of poverty, and we need to dispel that myth that it's always some kind of curse. And then finally, that unavoidable call to action. Okay, let's unpack this.
I think the only place to start is with definitions. It's absolutely necessary.
Right.
Because if we just assume poor means, having a low income, we miss at least half of the scriptural context. The sources show the biblical idea is it's holistic. Yeah. It's about a state of profound vulnerability.
So looking at the Old Testament, the language itself is so much more specific than just like an accounting term.
Yeah.
What are some of those key Hebrew words?
Well, there are three that really stand out, and each one adds another layer of meaning.
Okay.
First, you have ani. This word means someone who's afflicted, humble, or, and this is critical, oppressed.
Oppressed.
Then there's ebion. That one's a bit more focused on someone who is needy, someone lacking the basics, food, shelter.
Necessities.
The bare necessities. And finally, you have dal, which describes someone who is weak or vulnerable, often in terms of their social standing.
So wait, if ani has oppression built right into its definition, that means poverty isn't just about what you don't have.
Exactly.
It's about what has been taken from you or what you're being blocked from accessing. It means poverty is, at its root, a violation of justice.
That is the key synthesis. You've got it. Biblical poverty includes material lack, for sure, but it also means social exclusion, powerlessness, and being vulnerable to exploitation.
And once you see it that way, it just reframes everything.
It does. The whole issue immediately becomes one of social morality, not just personal finances.
Which is why we see these really radical statements about where God stands on all this. This idea that God actually personally identifies with this vulnerable state. It's just profound.
It's startlingly clear. The sources show that caring for the poor isn't just a good deed. It's framed as a direct transaction with God himself.
You're talking about Proverbs.
Proverbs 19.17. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward them. Just think about that phrase. Lends to the Lord. It's like God is personally taking on the debt of the vulnerable.
Wow. Okay, so then we move into the New Testament. We get the Greek terms chos. Does that carry the same kind of depth?
Kuchos is maybe even more intense. It usually describes someone who is utterly destitute, completely reliant on others to even survive.
Like the beggar at the gate.
Exactly like that. Someone with absolutely nothing. And this is the term that gets used to the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor in spirit, which is just fascinating.
So if we pull it all together, the definition covers material poverty, social poverty like having no power or voice, and then the spiritual poverty. And the Bible treats them all so seriously.
With immense gravity and compassion.
Which brings us to God's absolute stance. If the definition is this broad, the command for his people is, well, it's pretty narrow and uncompromising.
Undeniable. The sources make it undeniable that God doesn't just sympathize. He commands active defense of the poor.
Right.
You look at a passage like Psalm 146, and it's basically a statement of divine policy.
Yeah.
God upholds the cause of the oppressed, gives food to the hungry, and then he gets really specific.
He lists groups, right.
He lists the most vulnerable people in that society. The widow, the orphan, and the sojourner, or the foreigner.
These aren't just, nice ethical suggestions. This is a core requirement for being God's people. It's not just about charity, it's about justice.
It is. Now, we have to talk about a verse that is probably the most misused in this entire conversation.
I think I know which one you mean.
Deuteronomy 15.11. There will always be poor people in the land.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that used so many times as a kind of philosophical shield. A reason to do nothing. Like, see, it's God's design. We can't fix it.
And that interpretation just completely rips the verse out of its context. It's so important for you to hear the sentence that comes immediately after that one.
What does it say?
It says, therefore I command you to be open-handed toward your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy.
Wow. That changes everything.
Everything.
It's not a permission slip for apathy. It's an acknowledgement of a sad reality that is supposed to mandate our compassion.
Exactly. The fact that poverty persists is the very reason we are commanded to be generous. The two ideas are directly linked. And it confirms God's heart for justice.
Okay, so if poverty's existence mandates our generosity, then the next question is crucial. Why does it exist in the first place? And this gets to that huge misconception that it's always a punishment for sin.
And the Bible just forcefully rejects that simplistic view. The key story has to be the man born blind in John chapter 9.
Right, where the disciples ask Jesus.
They ask, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? They're assuming that his suffering, his vulnerability, must be the result of a specific sin.
And Jesus' reply just blows that whole premise apart.
It's a total theological correction. He says neither this man nor his parents sinned. He's making it crystal clear that suffering and poverty are not always, or even primarily, the result of some personal moral failure.
So what are the causes according to the Bible? Because the sources show a really complex picture, not just one thing.
They show a really balanced view.
Yeah.
The sources point to four main factors, and the first two are systemic. Number one, oppression and injustice. Proverbs gives this startling image of the poor being robbed of their own fields, even when they have abundant crops.
So the problem isn't a lack of hard work, it's that the powerful are literally stealing the fruit of their labor.
Right, and that's directly connected to the second cause, exploitation.
James chapter 5.
Yes, it's one of the most intense warnings in the whole Bible, aimed right at the rich who exploit their workers by withholding their wages.
Yeah.
It says their cries have reached the ears of God.
Now, the third cause listed is laziness.
It's true. Proverbs does say that idleness can lead to lack, but what's so vital here is that the sources present this alongside and often overshadowed by these massive systemic problems.
So it's part of the picture, but not the whole picture.
Not even close. And the fourth cause is just external forces. Wars, natural disasters, systems of injustice that just wipe people out no matter how hard they work.
So blaming the poor for their poverty is biblically just irresponsible. The sources prioritize these systemic issues, and it means that wealth is not always a sign of righteousness.
Not at all. And this deeper understanding of the causes helps us make sense of Jesus' ministry.
Right.
His actions really reflected this holistic view of poverty. He was anointed, as it says in Luke, to preach good news to the poor.
But he didn't just preach to them, he lived among them. I mean, it's still jarring to think that the Messiah chose to experience that kind of insecurity. The Son of Man has no place to lay his head.
His whole life was an active association with the marginalized. And that association is what gives his warnings about riches so much moral authority.
The famous camel in the eye of a needle. Why was he so extreme about that? Was he condemning wealth itself?
No, the sources are very clear on this. He wasn't condemning wealth. He was condemning the love of riches, the greed, the neglect that wealth so often creates.
So what's so dangerous about it?
It feeds three very dangerous things in the human heart. First, it creates pride.
Okay.
Second, it produces self-sufficiency, this illusion that you don't really need God or anyone else. And the most dangerous one, it blinds the heart.
Blinds the heart.
Yeah. When you're secure and comfortable, it can make you literally unable to see the desperate needs of people right in front of you. You just don't share their vulnerability anymore.
So the barrier to the kingdom isn't the money itself, but what the money does to your soul.
The spiritual corrosion of materialism.
Exactly.
And because...
And this is where, the rubber meets the road. We've gone from diagnosis to application. If God identifies with the poor and injustice angers him, what is the role of the believer?
Well, the sources are emphatic. Faith without action is dead.
This is where it gets fiercely practical.
Non-negotiable, really. James chapter 2 just lays it out. It says if someone lacks clothing and food, and you just say, oh, go in peace, be warm, but you don't actually do anything for their physical needs.
Your faith is useless.
It says that faith is useless. It's just an empty sentiment. It turns compassion from a feeling into an action.
And we see this in the early church, right, in the book of Acts.
We see it in this radical way. Acts chapter 4 describes them sharing possessions, caring for widows, feeding the needy. And it results in this incredible phrase, there were no needy persons among them.
That's the ideal, isn't it? A community where the care is so intentional that it solves the problem from the inside out.
It was collective structural love. And the goal was always to restore the dignity of the person who had been marginalized.
So, to bring this all to a close, let's just land on that message of hope and dignity. The Bible never glorifies poverty, but it never, ever dehumanizes the poor.
Never. That's the ultimate reassurance. God's promise is that he sees them, he hears them, and he will intervene. Psalm 34 says, "This poor man called, and the Lord heard him." They are not forgotten. They are uniquely attended to.
So when we look at the gospel, it's this comprehensive thing. It is spiritual salvation, yes, but it also demands this moral renewal and this essential social responsibility.
It seeks to restore the person's relationship with God and their standing in the community.
So for you, our listener, what does this all mean? Let's just summarize these key insights. First, poverty is defined broadly. It includes oppression and vulnerability.
Second, the poor are not forgotten by God. They are uniquely cherished. Injustice and exploitation, they anger God immensely.
And compassion, shown through real, tangible action, honors him. And at the end of the day, faith must act.
And that commitment isn't optional. It's the evidence of what we believe. So we have to connect this back to a personal challenge. How do we treat the afflicted, the oppressed in our own communities? The sources leave us with this deeply provocative thought from Proverbs that ties our morality directly to our Maker.
What's the verse?
It says, "Whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their Maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God."
That puts everything in a stark perspective. Our treatment of the needy is directly related to how we view the Creator of the universe. We hope this deep dive encourages you to consider the practical applications of this knowledge in your own life. Thank you for joining us.